The Prohibition era in the United States, spanning from 1920 to 1933, was a tumultuous period marked by a constitutional ban on the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages. Instituted through the 18th Amendment and enforced by the Volstead Act, Prohibition sought to curb the social ills associated with alcohol consumption. However, it inadvertently ushered in a vibrant and often violent black market, fueled social and cultural upheavals, and left a lasting imprint on American history. The roots of Prohibition can be traced to the temperance movement of the 19th century. This movement, largely driven by evangelical Protestant groups, argued that alcohol was a primary cause of poverty, domestic abuse, and societal decay. Organizations such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union, WCTU, and the Anti-Saloon League, ASL, championed the cause, linking sobriety to moral and civic virtue. The temperance movement gained traction during the Progressive Era, a period of widespread social reform that sought to address the excesses of industrialization and urbanization. The onset of World War I further galvanized the Prohibition movement. Advocates argued that grain used in alcohol production should instead be directed toward feeding troops and civilians. Additionally, anti-German sentiment demonized beer manufacturers, many of whom were of German descent, such as the prominent Anheuser-Busch Company. The 18th Amendment, ratified in 1919, prohibited the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors, but did not ban the consumption or possession of alcohol. To enforce the amendment, Congress passed the Volstead Act, which defined intoxicating liquor as beverages containing more than 0% alcohol by volume and outlined penalties for violations. Enforcement proved challenging from the outset. The Prohibition Bureau, established under the Treasury Department, was underfunded and understaffed, with only a few thousand agents tasked with policing the entire nation. Corruption among law enforcement officials was rampant, as many agents were either bribed or intimidated by bootleggers. Prohibition inadvertently created a lucrative black market for alcohol. Bootleggers smuggled liquor across borders, moonshiners distilled illegal spirits in rural areas, and urban speakeasies flourished, providing hidden venues for patrons to drink. Speakeasies often required passwords or secret handshakes to gain entry, and became central to the social life of the era. Major cities like Chicago and New York became hotbeds of organized crime. Figures such as Al Capone rose to infamy, building criminal empires on the profits of illegal alcohol sales. Capone's syndicate reportedly earned up to $60 million annually at its peak. Violent clashes between rival gangs and law enforcement, including the infamous St. Valentine's Day Massacre, underscored the era's lawlessness. Despite the risks, public demand for alcohol remained strong. Homemade spirits like bathtub gin and moonshine became popular, though their often poor quality led to health risks, including blindness and death. Additionally, the federal government introduced denatured alcohol, treated with toxic chemicals, to discourage consumption, which tragically resulted in numerous poisonings. Prohibition coincided with a period of dramatic social change in the United States. The 1920s, often dubbed the Roaring Twenties, was characterized by jazz music, flapper culture, and a loosening of traditional social mores. Speakeasies became hubs of cultural innovation, especially in urban centers, fostering the growth of jazz and breaking down racial barriers as black musicians found new audiences. Women played a pivotal role in both Prohibition and its opposition. While groups like the WCTU supported the movement, others, such as the Women's Organization for National Prohibition Reform, argued that Prohibition had failed and led to increased violence and corruption. The changing roles of women during this era, symbolized by the flapper lifestyle, reflected broader societal shifts. Prohibition also highlighted the stark divide between rural and urban America. Rural areas where support for temperance was strongest viewed cities as dens of vice and moral decay. Urban centers, on the other hand, saw the law as an intrusion on personal liberties. The economic impact of Prohibition was profound and multifaceted. The closure of breweries, distilleries, and saloons resulted in widespread job losses. Governments at all levels also suffered significant revenue declines, as alcohol taxes had been a major source of funding. The loss of this revenue contributed to fiscal strain, during the early years of the Great Depression. Conversely, the underground alcohol trade generated immense profits for criminal enterprises. However, these gains were concentrated among a small number of individuals and organizations, further exacerbating economic inequality. By the late 1920s, public opinion began to shift against prohibition. The law's failure to curb alcohol consumption, combined with its role in fostering organized crime and corruption, led to widespread disillusionment. The onset of the Great Depression added urgency to calls for repeal, as the government sought new sources of revenue. In 1933, the 21st Amendment was ratified, repealing the 18th Amendment and ending prohibition. It remains the only constitutional amendment to be repealed. The repeal was celebrated nationwide, marking the return of a regulated and taxed alcohol industry. The Prohibition era left a complex legacy. While it failed to achieve its goals, it profoundly influenced American society, culture, and law enforcement. It exposed the limits of legislating morality and the unintended consequences of such efforts. The era also underscored the resilience of public demand and the ingenuity of those who sought to circumvent the law. Today, prohibition serves as a cautionary tale about the complexities of social reform and the challenges of balancing public health with individual freedoms. Its influence can still be seen in debates over drug legalization, public health policy, and the role of government in regulating personal behavior.
Thank you for listening to History Videos 101. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more fascinating content.